Conscious Collaboration brings together entrepreneurs, changemakers, and thought leaders. We aim to highlight the people that embody the idea of aligned mind, body, and business. Each week, we share, discuss, and learn from the various experiences and ideas of our guest experts. Through our discovery, we find a path to an aligned mind, body, and business.
Hi, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Emily, and we are the Conscious Collaboration Podcast. What up, Lisa? What up, people, world? What's going on?
Yeah, what up, people worldwide? What up, aliens that are with us?
Mr. Worldwide.
Mr. Worldwide.
Yeah.
Everybody.
All of you. What up? So today, what's been on the brain is celebrating victories. It kind of goes along with taking on a state of gratitude, to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
But turning that gratitude towards yourself. It can also be turned outwards as well. I don't think ever going to be any harm in that. But really celebrating your own victories. And that I was getting on to Lisa right before we pushed record. Because she called herself out and she said, well, I don't know if I have anything relevant.
Is that what I said? I was like, I don't think it's coming to
That's
me.
exactly what you said. I wish you had already pressed record. Hit rewind. No, that's exactly what you said. I don't know if I have anything relevant. And I said, of course you do. Looking back on your entire life up to this point to get you where you are is full of victories, small and large. And, maybe you meant you were just talking about it in a workout perspective, but you have those as well. So
you're right.
Anyway,
I'm
I
less
called
likely.
Lisa out. She called herself out before we even pushed record. And I said, you are who we're making this episode for. So if you're,
like
and
me.
that just kind of points out like the subtle ways that we can knock ourselves down a rung or two, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's what you were doing, but it can't
in little
it's
ways,
important how we speak to ourselves, even if it's sort of done like tongue in cheek or, whatever. I never do that.
No, you never. I never hear that.
Never self-deprecating. But even if it's done tongue in cheek,
right.
That's weird when you say it twice in a row, but y'all know what I mean.
I wouldn't know where that phrase
your
comes
body
from.
knows, your cells know, your brain knows. It takes that on almost like as if it were a caregiver doing that. Like, would you say that? Would you say that same thing to me? Like, I don't know if you have anything relevant for this episode.
Oh,
even in like a joking
no,
way,
absolutely not.
Right. So that just kind of illustrates the little, and I know that Lisa doesn't actually believe that about herself fundamentally, that she's never achieved anything.
No.
But, it just goes to kind of point out the sneaky ways.
It's easy
to
downshift into
the imposter syndrome kind of thing can take over.
Either like imposter syndrome or just like blank slate,
or just being hard on yourself in some kind of way.
Yeah, you get stuck in like the minutia of a day and you're like, but if you think about like, how did I really ever get here?
Or because you're looking ahead at where you're not
yet. Maybe.
So here's one of the big things that kind of inspired this topic for me. I had some energy work done this weekend. Really a cool practitioner, kind of a mix of modalities. But one of the things that she did was give me this little guided visualization to help me get into this mode of celebrating my own victories. And I'm not going to do it, as eloquently as she did, but long story short, she was having me visualize a tiny little sprout of a vine that was kind of like sitting in the corner of a window. And then she had me visualize that it had grown up to one nail in the first corner of the window.
Mhm.
And then she had me visualize that it had grown over to a second nail in another corner of the window. And then there was a final nail, and that was kind of the peak of the visualization, that I was this vine, and I was frustrated that it was taking me so long, or that I couldn't quite reach that last nail. It was a couple inches away. And so she was guiding me to look back at all the little the leaves from before that had already grown on the path to get there, and all the little sprouts that had started coming off of it in other directions. And just having me pause and be grateful and appreciative to myself for
Mhm.
already having grown that far, and everything that it took, and everything. And of course it becomes symbolic at that point, but
Yeah.
everything that it took to get there, all the sacrifices and all the work and all the kind of thankless time, the
Yeah.
mundane stuff in between, where you feel like you're getting nothing done, but of course you are.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that started for me. And then I talk about it a lot in the context of training and working out too, just in general, not even just in a competition prep context. I think we should always be celebrating our victories, however big or small we perceive them, because that's all. Big or small is just a perception. Um and so you know um it builds momentum. It builds
Mhm.
momentum to continue to move forward, especially if you are looking towards that last nail. You've got a couple inches to go, and it's like a rough road to get there. You're
Yeah.
gonna be like, all right, I'm gonna have to like really like buck up for this one, and
I
put
really,
everything I
really
got
like
into
that
it.
like analogy and visualization that she guided you through. I'm looking at my own pathos that's climbing, but
Yes,
it
that's what I
doesn't
was
have
envisioning, of course.
I've been looking at it while you're talking, and I haven't really guided it that much, but yet it's going in the direction that I wanted to.
Yeah.
But across the nails, so like in a pathos or lots, I'm not a plant expert, but you know how like when they need to change direction, they create like a new nub and
Mm-hmm.
a joint, and then they grow, they happen to redirect. But when
Mm-hmm.
you're creating that nub and new foundation, it feels like you stopped. And then
Mm-hmm.
it's like you're growing from that point. So sometimes when we feel stopped or stuck, it might actually just be a redirection.
Mm-hmm.
And that like final nail, when you were describing it, I pictured it being like around the top of a window frame. So it would be like
Mm-hmm.
a hard
Yep.
angle for that last little leaf, the stem to point in that direction. And
Mm-hmm.
it probably felt the hardest or the worst.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I really like that guided visualization, but I find it interesting a lot in, her work. I think you said she dabbles in, we should drop her name if she feels comfortable, but, if she's working in shamanism or, um, in Reiki, there's a lot of talk about, with energy being very like, string light. There's ropes, there's strings, there's knots. And it's interesting. It's a way for us to visualize our own or energetic ties to ourselves and to other things. So,
Yeah, and a couple of things came up while you were talking about that. If you think about it, at the point where you were almost to every single one of those nails,
mhm.
you were at this place where you could see it, but you couldn't quite see it. You didn't quite know how
Yeah,
you were going to get there.
yeah,
you know. So it's like, and she also described to me and again, I'm just not going to say this as eloquently as she was telling me, but basically every time you do kind of level up, take on more responsibility, whatever, get to a certain point, there's kind of a time period where you have to like settle into that point, and it feels more chaotic at first until you sort of allow it to settle. So it's just like anticipating and understanding and acknowledging all the points along that way. And she has a decent Instagram following, so I'm going to say that she'd probably be okay with me giving away her Instagram. She is anapo.energy, ANAPO.energy on Instagram.
Yeah, I'll put it
Follow.
in the description notes so people can follow it. We'll have to have her on sometime, but I think that's a really good practice and a check-in for, where you are and where you are right now, but for everybody, it is. I mean, when we're reflecting back to all the different victories, it's easy to wash over them because you're constantly looking towards the next thing to attain versus really settling in and be like, wow, like these are achievements, like feel them for yourself. It's easy for me to do it for you, for me to be proud of you or to say like, oh my gosh, I'm so impressed by you. But how hard is that sometimes to do for ourselves?
To do for yourselves. Yeah. And there's layers to that, societally, there's always kind of a level of programming for women, especially like, who does she think she is, that kind of thing. So we have to, and that, although you could argue that a lot of that is self-inflicted as well, we just assume that people are judging that about us, so we kind of can hold back our shine. But if you are lifting weights, that helps you to get right over that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think too, there's that thing that women do that I think with the whole Barbie movie being out and everything, I mean,
which I still haven't seen yet, by the
I
way.
haven't. So please take anything I say with a grain of salt because this is only through what I've seen on Instagram or
right. I've heard. I've heard that there's
from
some.
My daughter. But so like we're there's a quote that we were tagged on by a friend that we're told to be pretty but not too pretty, strong but not overshadow other people, lead but not be bossy. So there's like all these conflicting things that we're taught that like we have to ask for permission.
Lead but don't be bossy.
Yeah, don't be too much.
Yeah.
Don't be too little, but don't be too much. Like it's just we don't know. And especially when you're an American, I don't know like if it's all around the world. I think it is all around the world, but we're grown up to be very much like what is culturally beautiful. That's what our value is placed on a lot of times. So in for example, like talking about our achievements in working out or anything like that, it's very like that line where you're like, am I showing too much? Am I being too like ego based when I'm talking about like how great I am at this or the improvements I've made? So I think there's like this big societal pressure and like judgment from people, what feels comfortable or not comfortable to them. As we're talking about like sharing imagery or and even just words like I think that I've seen it too, where I've had friends that are so grateful that they've turned their health around and they've lost a lot of weight. Yeah. And then there'll be people that come on and say, well, you need to eat a sandwich. And
well, that's always a projection of what their own shit that they don't like about themselves, right? Like, I don't know. I think especially if somebody's celebrating a health achievement, if people are coming, I mean, there's a special cut. Don't negatively comment on that.
Right. It's like when you see
it and you kind of got to thicken your skin, I guess, or at least get yourself in a headspace that people might,
Yeah.
say things, but that it's always a projection of themselves. And just keep in mind that pride and ego are not inherently bad things. They exist for a reason, and they are healthy to a certain degree, to keep you from being a doormat, or just a person with no, like, pride is not a bad word at all, in my opinion. So I think people should just keep that in mind, that it's a lot more complex, I know, with some people, than just keep something in mind that's like something to be deprogrammed. But it's just true. I've felt that over the years, and you can think about it this way too, because I've definitely been in that place where it was much more like uh resistant to sharing in the way that I do now, all the stuff that I was doing online. But if you think about the potential benefits of you doing so, meaning, like, you don't know who's watching you, especially,
Yeah.
if you've got people who have accumulated from all sorts of different, you know, jobs and places you've lived, or whatever, different sort of networks on your social media. You really never know who's watching you, who's not engaging directly, but who's watching you. I mean, I've had people trickle in over the years that I haven't heard from in literal decades, who will, eventually shoot me a message and be like, "Oh, I just got one
Keeping up.
today.
Yeah.
I've just got one today." Like, "Oh, just, yeah, just keep it up." I'm like, sometimes thanking you,
Yeah.
for showing that, because if you're showing a journey that somebody can relate to, or that they could relate to you at a certain part in your journey, and then they see you at a different part in your journey, and you're doing something that they that resonates with them, but that they maybe thought was impossible. Like, you could, just by existing the way that you do and sharing it and celebrating your victories, you could play a huge role in changing somebody else's life, just by inspiring that in them as well.
I definitely think that there's healthy projections and reflections in our interrelationships. Um, it's I think it's beneficial to think of yourself, like we were talking in the pre-chat, and how I am so motivated and proud of you and your journey towards your, getting ready and prepping for your competition.
Mhm.
But to turn that around for myself, that
Mhm.
same energy and
Mhm.
reflection, to be able to realize my own journey. But you're right, you never know who you're influencing,
Mhm.
from below or above you, in a way that's meaningful or motivational. I was thinking about, I think we talked about it on another episode, and I can't remember which, but recently, that before mirrors were invented, there was less of a recognition of self. So before we really realized there were like reflections, or like narcissists, before we realized and saw our own reflection, we didn't really see ourselves as ourselves. We saw ourselves from more of a collective, good or bad, I don't know. And then once we started to have that reflection of ourselves, and we became more aware of our own selves and our own self journey, as a part of a collective, it transforms. And I think that's, it's beneficial to be able to self-reflect, and to go outside of what others do in a nonconformist way, to grow and to encourage other people to be thought leaders.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And you don't even necessarily have to put that intention into it. Again, the whole point of this is really to bring it back to yourself and cultivate that ability to really be your own biggest fan, your own biggest supporter. And that's not only not selfish, it's really healthy, I think.
Yeah. I mean, like you said,
Mhm.
it's a way to raise your vibration, like gratitude.
Mhm.
So that like,
And if you can bring a, because it doesn't put out anyone else's light, so it's like, that'll magnetize more people to do what you're doing and make the collective a higher
yeah,
vibration, you
exactly.
know?
Yeah.
So always celebrate those little victories. And that doesn't mean, if you're not a social media person, that doesn't mean you have to like start posting everything you do on social media. I think even keeping it as a private practice, if that's more what you're called to do, is perfectly fine. Journaling, or just in a prayer or meditation kind of context. But you can definitely, it doesn't have to be social media per se, or in a public setting. That little quote you always see on the pretty like graphics and stuff. Don't only look back to see how far you've come, or something to
Mhm.
that effect.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Yep.
like that.
Yep.
And it-
And like you'll see stuff sometimes too, like remember the time, like when you wanted what you have now, or when you couldn't
Yeah.
imagine having what you have now, or something
Right.
something like
Yeah.
that. So
I love all
it's
that.
motivating.
I love, thinking about years ago or when you were a child and all the things that you desired. At some point, you're living it now,
Hmm.
and it seems so impossible, or however you're going to get there.
Well,
Um,
not even just as a child, like
mhm. 3 years ago,
3 years
or
ago.
last year,
Right.
or 3 weeks
Right.
ago.
Right.
Because things
Right.
happen all the
Any
time.
acknowledgement of, your own progress along the way helps you to move forward.
A lot of people did that type of thinking during the pandemic when we were just stuck to ourselves and contemplation. And a lot of people took that as a great opportunity for meditation. And I mean, you did, I did, a lot of people did, going inward and just really starting to create just, change and newness,
Mhm.
that we knew we wanted to do what we're doing today at that
Mhm.
point. You
Yeah.
set those intentions, planted those seeds.
Yeah, that was definitely a big kind of blank slate time.
Mhm.
Um and obviously, there were things that felt negative that came along with it, and but you do what you can with the situation you have and the resources you can muster, and then you fucking congratulate yourself for doing a good job
Yeah,
when it got really hard.
yeah,
Look at all the hard times too, like that's another little banger of advice that I've gotten, is to help really get a perspective on your progress by looking at your lows.
mhm,
Measure progress by your lows.
yeah,
And look back 5 years ago or whatever, and what did you consider your low point at that time, and you'd be like, whoa. Okay,
right,
I guess we've made some progress.
right. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think my phone does a really good job of reminding me different periods of time that I'm living in my life. Like, I've been reminded a lot of, when your phone puts together the little montages for you your
So
from your
violent.
cloud. Like, thanks, phone, for reminding me of that. But I mean,
Yeah.
you know, wow, just really how much things have grown upon that foundation that felt, 3 years ago stagnant. It really wasn't at all. It was just like, that knot or redirection of
It was the global tower.
it was.
It was just like, this is not working.
Right.
Start over, humans.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about I saw like the photos that were shown to me from 3 years ago. I don't know if you've gotten them recently too, but were of I think it was was that right before I started working with you? It was
Right around this time.
Yeah, it was a
Mhm.
collection from so during the pandemic, I had this giant project that everybody was just saying was impossible during the pandemic because resources and sourcing were impossible and the timeline was too short. And I was like, at that time I was going through
Watch
separation.
me.
Yeah, and it was separating from my ex and the two new businesses and the two toddlers. And I was like, I'm doing it. And
Mhm.
it got done at this time, 3 years ago, was really nearing the completion of this huge project that I thought was completely I thought it was possible or else I wouldn't have taken it. But that I think is probably my largest collaborative project to date. And I
Mm.
think, as we're talking like about conscious collaboration, I think that's when I got so obsessed with collaborating was like
Mhm.
nothing's impossible if you collaborate the right people.
And at the time where we were all having to learn the new way of collaboration.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we had been in the online space for some time, but still, it
Right.
wasn't the default method for everything, you know.
Mhm.
Would we be sitting here zooming a podcast
No.
if that hadn't happened, or would we be sitting around a table, you and I,
Mhm.
doing a podcast,
Yeah, I mean, I think that was when I realized that collaborating and creating a career and life path could mean more than what's just available in your neighborhood. It meant like going global. Like that meant
Mhm.
collaborating with people in other continents sometimes. So it's but during that time at the same time we were in a global state of like lockdown and
Mhm.
just I would like to think there's a good portion of people that really expanded during that time, but I wonder how many people really, got stuck.
Well, and you factor in all the political stuff that was brewing and continues to, obviously, but things got really, really rowdy
Oh
right
yeah.
around then too. So you just factor all that in. You factor in that a lot of people really aren't good with change,
Mhm.
or lack of control, or all these things, and that's where all the free will kicks in with this global tower moment. It's like, are you a person who's gonna take it and just do what you can with it, or are you gonna freak out and resist at every turn about how shitty it is, and
Yeah.
just end up stalling yourself out more? And obviously that's a very blatant example, but that could go for any of these little, any of these, I won't call them little, but any, day to day goals and tasks and achievements that you're talking about as well. Like, are you going to, because things are inevitably going to go, off plan, off schedule. And can you take that and turn that momentum around by celebrating your victories,
Mhm.
celebrating what you've done well in this case, celebrating how far you came to get to this place? Or are you going to focus on what is not there, what you don't have, what is not
Right.
working, and
Or a bunch of people telling
kind of
you no.
say,
A bunch of
right, or a
people
bunch of people
saying,
telling you no. I mean,
"Mm,
or one person telling you no. Are you going to be the one that stops when one person tells you no?
mhm, mhm,
I've I've had a little mantra most of my adult life, but it's like for anybody who tells me no, somebody can tell me yes,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And
Just
now,
have to get
now,
creative and resourceful and put yourself out there. But I think not to veer off too much from what we're talking about, I think that all that becomes more possible when you again steer yourself towards what is going right, what you have already done, what you
Mhm.
have already achieved, and what maybe even specific thing that you're looking at as a failure or a mishap or an obstacle right now can you reframe as a victory.
Mhm. Yeah. I
Most
mean,
many situations, you
yeah.
know, offer an opportunity to find a victory within the situation. And even if you're not entirely happy with whatever that is, doesn't that put you in so much of a better energy? Like it is what it is at this point. Doesn't that put you in so much of a better energy to move forward? If you're like, I mean, you could say that's trying to find the silver lining essentially, but finding the victory in that situation.
Yeah. I was thinking about in the I Ching, whenever we read about obstacles, and they are usually represented by like boulders in the path of, in water or rapids, and how you can just keep slamming into the boulder, or you can go around it or over it. But when you're able to look back and see your journey for all that it is, it's like gathering your own strength to be able to, um, rise above any obstacles.
Rise above though, not force or resist
Right.
your way
Right.
through a boulder. Right? No
Right.
force, no resistance, just going with the flow.
Yeah.
Mhm. And it's like it's a reminder to stay positive, but also without, I think, being toxic about being positive. We're not,
Mhm.
saying that things are kittens and rainbows when they're not, but I think reframing things is useful in
Yeah,
many
I mean,
situations.
reframing it like the greater your success, the greater your obstacles. Also,
Mhm.
the greater your
Mo
opportunity
money, mo
as
problems.
well.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, I mean, whether it be money or
Well, that's a
yeah, I mean, that's another thing.
metaphor, the way I'm
A
using
metaphor. Yeah,
it.
exactly.
For the
But
classic 90s.
it's almost like, wow, like I wouldn't even have this quote unquote problem or obstacle if I had not gotten this far to where I am, and most certainly have the experience and the knowledge to be able to rise to that.
And you can get curious and excited thinking about all these times before when you've encountered these situations, and then ultimately on the other side of it, you discovered why that was the
Mhm.
perfect the perfect way for that to play out.
Yeah.
So
I
bringing
still
that
love
faith
playing
back into
around.
it. Mhm.
Yeah, like, I know I do a terrible job at this in the gym sometimes, but I love playing around with the concept of, like, why is this so easy?
Yeah.
Why do I approach these obstacles with such ease? Or why am I so blessed to be able to figure out what to do under any circumstance? Um,
Yes.
and really, like you said, with curiosity and play, approach every situation like, okay,
Yes.
with curiosity, this is going to be great to figure out.
Mhm. Yep. Um, and if we're looking for a tarot card, I think this is maybe a 6 of wands, which pretty literally represents victory after a long battle. Um, I don't know, maybe my tarot peeps can throw us some opinions on that. Maybe there's some other cards you think would fit this concept as well, celebrating
Oh,
of oneself.
interesting.
But if you think so, then holla at us in the Conscious
Yes.
Collaboration Collective and
Yes.
let me know.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about the representations of this inside of the closed and private Facebook group, and follow the links provided in the description. And we hope to hear more from you. And I think we should line up one of our next guests to be our friend that did the energy work with you.
Absolutely. I will hit her up.
If she's listening, getting hit up in all the directions.
She can come give us a bunch of golden nuggets because I know she's got them.
Yeah. All right, Emily, it's been fun. It's been great, everybody.
Yes. Thanks, guys. Celebrate your victories.
Yes.
All right.
Talk to you in 5. Bye.
Thank y'all so much for listening to our podcast. If you haven't yet, please be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and share with all your friends so they can join our circle of collaboration on this journey. You can find us on Instagram at Conscious Collaboration Podcast, on Spotify, iTunes, and Audible, to name a few. Please join us next time for another deep dive into how you can live life in more alignment, mind, body, and business. Send us your questions and comments in our DMs or email us at consciouscollaborationpodcast@gmail.com. See you in 5 minutes.